Hello, beautiful Zoom people. Thank you for joining us on this late, gloomy winter day here at the end of March, this cold and never-ending month. What's that saying about March again? In like a lamb, out like a house guest who just won't leave, or something like that. Welcome to Passive Perfect, passive house construction in the Hudson Valley. This conversation is an exploration of the ideas and concepts in our second annual Passive House Guide, which was recently published in the spring issue of Upstate House. The Passive House Guide highlights the innovations of passive house technology on the regional level, showcasing leading edge architecture and building techniques. The current issue is available via this link in the chat. Ta-da, I love that. For those who don't know me, I'm Brian Mahoney. I'm the editorial director of Chronogram Media, and I will be loosely in charge of this afternoon's proceedings. The experts here today to talk about their passive house projects are Carl Hansen of River Architects, In Cho of Cho Shield Studio, Michael Robinson of Urban Myth Construction, and Alessandro Ronfini of Demo Architects. They'll each give a brief presentation, and then we'll have a Q&A. I want to dive right into this, but first, a few housekeeping notes. You all look like a pretty well-behaved group, so I'll leave it at this. Normal Zoom etiquette applies. Please keep yourself on mute, put all of your questions, comments, concerns, etc. in the chat. After our brief presentations, we'll choose the most trenchant and incisive questions to spark our discussion. Department of Shameless Self-Promotion. I would encourage all of you to subscribe to our magazines. We publish many magazines every month and every quarter. They're beautiful. They're not only gorgeous objects, but they're filled with information that will enrich your life. And they don't need recharging. Once they're made, all they need is light, just like passive houses. I'd like to thank John Lorcher and everyone at Hudson Valley chapter of Passive House Alliance who have helped us shape the content of the Passive House Guide these past 2 years. Y'all are wonderful partners to work with. I'd also like to give a shout out to Jeff Eckes of LDR Group. Jeff, I don't know if you're there, but Jeff was instrumental in convincing me that there was a there with Passive House and that we should create this project. So I'm really excited that I actually found out more about Passive House, and it seems like this is gaining more and more attention with each passing week, month, year. So I'm excited to continue on with this. Our sponsors tonight, I'd like to give a thanks to GH Builders, Hudson Valley, Cho Shield Studio, PH Design, Energy Conservation Services, and New Energy Works. And we have with us this evening Brian Blyer from New Energy Works, and he's going to take a moment to talk about what they do at New Energy Works. Brian, take it away.
Good evening, everybody. Brian with New Energy Works here. We are excited to be part of this Passive House conversation. New Energy Works started in Farmington, New York, over 30 years ago as a timber frame company with a triple bottom line ethos of people, planet, and profit, which has led us to high performance and sustainable building, specifically with the goal to help builders create high performance enclosures more easily. We like to call it our HPEZ, or High Performance Made Easier system, where we work with designers and builders to pre-panelize enclosure packages at our Farmington facility. This allows us to take the drafting, the detailing, and the creation of the custom enclosures into our scope, and the builders simply man the installation. This partnership makes for a quicker installation on site, removing a lot of the burden off the builder, especially for builders who may not have prior experience working with a lot of these details. If you're seeing the slide here in front of you, we've got a couple examples of some panels that we've built and installed. On the center of the page there is the finished product of the panels you see there with the zip on them. Lower right there is the Seminary Hill Orchard and Cidery that you'll probably hear more about later on from Carl Hansen of River Architects. And in the top center of the page there is actually a picture of our new shop that's just coming up on its 1-year anniversary. We've been hand building panels with carpenters under roof for 20 or so years, and just a year ago commissioned some semi-automated equipment as a new tool in our toolbox to help aid in that whole system. If you'd like to know more about what we do or talk about heavy timber construction or pre-panelizing high performance enclosures, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to talk to you guys and learn more about what projects you may have that we could help on.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.
Welcome.
All right. So yeah, that's as Brian noted, New Energy Works worked with River on the Seminary Hill Cidery construction, and we'll be hearing about that from Carl. So it's really time to get started, but you know, why are we here? You know, I want us all to cast our minds back to early February for a moment, and Winter Storm Landon. I'm sure everyone remembers this. Most of us probably lost power. Those of us, especially in the Hudson Valley, did. You know, hundreds of thousands of people lost power for days, and it showed the precarious nature of our power grid, which, given the ambitious goals of the CLCPA, will only become, you know, more reliant on that as New York pushes to electrify its buildings. Here in Kingston, where I live, we lost power for 2.5 days. My home is a stick-built house from the 1890s that has an envelope that, well, if it was a cheese, it would be more on the Swiss end than the hard-rinded Parmesan end, I'll say that. And so by the time the power came back on, it was 42 degrees in my house, and my wife and I and our dogs were huddled under blankets. And as we were sitting there shivering under the covers, I, of course, am scrolling through Instagram, as you do. You know, you got to keep up with the socials. And I follow an account, Bearsville Passive House. And on February 6th, like 3 days into the event, Winter Storm Landon, Bearsville Passive House posted a picture of the house from behind an ice-encrusted limb with this caption: 2 days and counting without power and internet. Everything is still covered in ice. Temperature in the house is 60 to 70 degrees, thanks to passive solar. It's a true testament to the science, design, and quality of a passive house. So, you know, we can talk all we want about the theory of passive house, but, you know, a practical situation like this, as I'm sitting there shivering under my covers, really brings home the passive house concept to me. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the people who are much smarter than I am. Up first is Alessandro Ronfini. Born and raised in Italy, architect Alessandro Ronfini worked on large commercial projects throughout Europe and the US before deciding to partner with Daniel Kidd and start Demo Architects. Am I saying that right? Demo, or is it Demo?
It's a demo, but it can be Demo, depending on the relationship.
Who you are. Okay, Demo Architects. With a mix of technical expertise, construction experience, and design background, Demo Architects worked toward implementing high-tech and prefab solutions both in commercial and residential projects, with a particular focus on sustainability and the principles of Passive House. We featured Alessandro's Olive Passive House in the current issue. Alessandro, take it away.
Thank you. Should I share it on my end, the presentation? Oh, no, okay, perfect. That's what I was asking. So yes, the Olive Passive House. So this is my own house in Olive Bridge. It's a 1,500 square foot passive house, Fuse 2018 certified. That we built, my wife and I built over the past almost 2 years. Luckily, because otherwise it would have been hard to afford it, we started the construction before the pandemic. Unfortunately, the pandemic slowed down and well, put a halt on the work for a couple of months, and then slowed down the completion of the work for several months afterwards. But the house is finally complete. We're living in it, and we're very happy with it. So can we go to the next slide? The shape of the house comes really from its location, and of course from the passive house principles. So the house is facing a beautiful pond, and which is on the southeast of the location of the house. So in order to make the maximum of the view and at the same time harvest as much sun as possible to warm the interior during the winter time, we rented a house southeast, but then we carved out this slice of the envelope to actually create this angled curtain wall, this glass wall that look towards the pond without looking onto the neighboring house from the neighbors. So because of this move, we're able to actually again get as much sun as possible, but at the same time get all the privacy that we wanted to have in the house. Next, please. So you can see here on the plan. So the house is very simple, and the idea from the house is really to start from a basic the basic shape of a gable house, something that a kid would draw, and rather than add onto it or simply draw openings onto it, the idea was really to carve out the interior space out of this simple volume. So almost like a sculptural move. So and everywhere where there was this removal process, the material reveals a warmer interior. So the exterior shell is this black standing seam metal, and then every time that you will go past that, you either have an opening or you have this, in this case, the Siberian larch siding that is really warm in not only in the feeling of it, but also in the color of it. The house is a 3-bedroom home. With 1 guest bedroom and a bathroom downstairs, and 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom upstairs, with a small loft workspace on the second floor that is facing this double height living room, dining room, and kitchen on the west end of the house. On the south, there's a porch that is also part of this movement of rotating the view towards the pond. And the same angle is used to create an awning over the entrance on the north side, and also orient the stairs and the kitchen, so that when you work in the kitchen, you're really just looking out at the pond, and again, not at the neighbors. Can we go on to the next? So the house, and Brian just mentioned actually panels. So the house is actually a panelized system. So we work with threshold builders, which unfortunately are not, well, the 2 partners decided to part ways. So the house was entirely a panelized system. So it was built in a shop in Kingston in panels, as you can see. Each panel is only insulated with the dense packed cellulose insulation. So we try to limit as much as possible the use of foam in the construction. And well, all the panels, of course, took several months to be completed. The construction of the envelope, just in 2 days, they assemble all the vertical walls. And then in this case, we decided not to use a pre-manufactured roof. So the roof was actually stick built and then insulated on site. But it was a really quick process where in 1 weekend there was only a slab, and then on my next visit there was the house was taking shape, and it was very exciting to see that. Here's a picture of the process of the installation of the panels. We can go to the next. So I have some pictures of the house here. So the house again the number of openings is pretty limited. Try to really use them as much as possible to harvest the light of the sun and really warm the interior. And at the same time, the house really looks very, very private to somebody that approaches it from the north side, from the driveway. So all the openings are on the south or on the east side where the master bedroom faces. But despite this appearance of being this solid black box from the street, once on the interior side, it's really a bright space. This window casts so much light. You can see it behind me. Even after the sun is setting down, there's always light flowing into the space, and really create this beautiful connection to the nature outside. Can you go to the next? So again, on the north side, you see the house is really private, really protected. While on the other side, as we've seen, it's pretty open and bright. The house is sitting on a slab on grade, so we have concrete floors on the interior, exposed concrete floors. Because the house is passive house, there's actually no. There's a question I get a lot is whether there's heating on the slab. and there isn't. It would have been an over design to actually put the heating on the slab, and if you want to build an all electric house, which this is, it's also not as easy to actually run hot water on the underside of the slab. So instead we use just forced air. So there's actually one mini split that hits the entire house, and it's over design. So it's definitely a house that just works for the most part by itself, and really the mini split, the heat pump is really pushing just in the middle of the winter when the temperatures outside are really cold. Next slide, please. So a couple of views of the kitchen and of the living room. Again, this big double height space with this giant glass facade and the loft workspace on the second floor that you can see in the second picture. On the right side, just one last thing. On the right side, this is a view of the corridor. So unfortunately, I don't have a picture of the entrance, but on the two main axes of the house, we always wanted to maintain this connection to the outside. So whenever you step upstairs, you see this corridor and a window or a door that leads to the terrace from the master bedroom. So there's always a direct connection between the circulation and views of the exterior view of the pond or the surroundings. On the same picture on the left side, you see that floor-mounted mini split. That's really the only system that was used. And since Brian mentioned the storm in February, we were actually shooting this house. So this house was published in the Upstate House magazine and also in Dwell magazine last month. And we were shooting it with a photographer and a video maker for Dwell during that storm. Luckily, the photographer is famous for not using any light, so he didn't need any power. But we stayed there for 2 days, and they realized only the last day that actually the power was out, because the temperature inside just stayed the same, even though people were going in and out constantly, you imagine, with the photographer crew. This is one of the picture of the bathroom downstairs, all very colorful tiles, very colorful fixtures. That sink was actually one of the first things we bought for the house from Zaborski in Kingston. You're probably familiar with that place. You can find a lot of colorful fixtures from the 50s there. And I think that's it. Is there another one? I remember. Oh no, okay, last one here. And at the bathroom upstairs, a little calmer space with these green tones. And finally, the last picture is of the east elevation of the house. So again, a completely different view from what you get on the opposite side, much warmer with all this exposed wood and the views of from the interior of the bedroom, the master bedroom down there. There's a private terrace balcony from there where you can get a beautiful views of the pond and again of the surrounding areas. And I think that's the last slide. No, last entrance. The entrance of the house. So more pictures of show you. Again, there's always the idea of creating a connection between interior and exterior. So here, the first thing that you see on the picture on the left, as you enter the house, you have this horizontal window that faces the pond. So again, from the moment you step into the house, you realize that there's something different on the opposite side. It's not this black box on four sides. It's actually much more transparent again on the other side, and really creates that anticipation, that connection that there's something more interesting happening outside of the house than there is inside the house.
Awesome. Thank you, Alessandro. That was a great walkthrough of the house. Even though that I edited the piece in Upstate House, I learned a couple things just now walking through it with you. And so you're at home now?
Yes. You can see that big wall right behind me.
Oh, lovely.
You probably hear my daughter screaming at some point. So yes, I'm at home.
Lovely. Okay. If you have any questions, please just pop them into the chat, and we'll get to them when our presentations are done. So next up is Michael Robinson. Michael has been a builder and developer and a passive house building enthusiast since he first learned about passive more than a decade ago. He is trained as a builder by both PHI and FIAS and serves as a founding board member of the Hudson Valley Passive House Alliance. In 2020, his low moderate income multifamily project in Newburgh, North Miller Multifamily Passive House, which he owns and built, was a first round winner of the NYSERDA Buildings of Excellence Award. He is currently finishing a nearly passive single family home on Outer Cape Cod. Outer Cape Cod? Like what, how do we do?
Wellfleet.
Wellfleet, okay. We featured the North Miller Multifamily Passive House project in the 2021 Passive House Guide. Michael, take it away.
Okay, well, I just have to apologize to you all because when Brian, you said no more than 10 slides, I took you dead seriously. And I have
you
to
should.
say,
You should.
well, unlike some people who remain nameless, Carl Hansen, but no, I'm joking, Carl. It's all right. Carl is actually sitting in a structure that I was the last contractor standing on, right there. You can all see, you can see my work right behind him. That's the River Architects. Where's my oh, there we are. Okay. So you can just go to the first slide. And again, guys, I'm really sorry. I'm stuffing 3 years of my life into about 8 slides, and it doesn't tell the full story. But this is in Newburgh. This is the award-winning house that Brian just talked about. This was sold to me by the city of Newburgh. If some of you might not be familiar with Newburgh, it's what a guy that I work with out here calls a friggin' armpit. That's what he says. It's an armpit. And that's a very, not a very nice way of saying that it is definitely a city that is in need of some help and money and better leadership. But it is also a city that is starting to be on the rise. In any case, I bought this structure, 197 North Miller, with the thought of making it become the first passive house in the city of Newburgh. It is, actually, you can go to the next slide. That is how it looks more or less now. We had to, because of the historic, it wasn't a historic district, so there's only certain things that we could do. We could not build, one thing that people do sometimes is build on the outside of the structure. If you look to the left of that slide, you'll see that kind of brownstone colored stucco. That's about a 6 inch. That's a 6 inch layer of polyiso insulation that I then stuccoed to look like kind of the brownstone, the normal kind of brownstone kind of color. So that is insulated on the exterior. I'll also show you a picture of the roof, where basically wherever we could insulate it and get away with it on the outside, we did. But on the bay windows, we had to insulate on the inside. And because they're bay windows, and because of they are at such acute angles, we had to use closed cell foam, just because closed cell foam is the highest R per inch. And we could not afford to have super thick walls there. I did this, by the way, in conjunction with John Lorscher, who is, I don't think John is here, but John was the energy modeler and the de facto architect on this. Okay, and you can go to the next slide. This is pretty much the shape I bought it in. Although, believe it or not, this was after I cleared about 3 30-yard containers out. I should have really taken a photograph beforehand. But when I say that I was hauling shit out of this building for weeks, I am actually saying that both literally and figuratively, because this place had been obviously been used as a squatter house, again, literally and figuratively, for both for raccoons, cats, and people. I did find all kinds of evidence so I did not hold workers for very long. They all got up and ran out pretty quickly. So I was left to shovel the shit all by myself pretty much. But now the happy news is, you can go to the next slide there. That's what it looks like now. It's each apartment is a floor through. Each apartment is heated by heated and cooled by the Mitsubishi Hyperheat mini split that you see up there in the upper right-hand corner. These are all 2-bedroom apartments. Again, they are low, moderate income, which means everybody that lives there makes 80% or less of the area median income. I tried to use as much of the stuff as the existing. You'll see doors that are actually, recovered from the original building, but most of that building kind of had to go, as I found out. So you can go to the next slide, I think. This is just to show that in order to keep that continuous insulation going up that stuccoed wall that I showed you before, that stuccoed wall goes up and over onto the new roof. Yes, it was pretty much a new roof after all was said and done. So there's about 4 inches of polyiso, and also on the underside of that roof deck, there's 12 inches of blown-in cellulose. So it's a pretty robust ceiling assembly.
It's 6 o'clock.
Sorry about that. You can go to the next one, I think. Just a shot of what it looked like mid-construction. I am a poster child for what to do and what not to do. Anybody that wants to pick my brain about doing a townhouse to passive house standards, I'm more than happy to talk to you about it, because I followed, if anybody here knows, the 475 company. They are down in Brooklyn, a fantastic company. I love them. However, I disagree with some of their protocols for retrofitting historic townhouses to passive house standards. I think there are probably better ways of doing it, but this is my foray into their way of doing it. And one of the things I was doing here was I was sistering basically every joist, because every joist was pretty flimsy after the flooring, the floor sheet that came off. Everything became very, very wobbly, and I realized I had to sister everything with LVLs. So it became a much pricier project at that point, and it just continued to spiral out of control from there. And LVLs presents kind of a problem, as you'll see in the next slide, I think, but I'm not sure. Yes. The problem when you take old lumber and new lumber and you sandwich it together is you create a nice little wind tunnel from the outside into the inside. So right here, my buddy Steve is foaming in between the old 3x8 joist and the new LVL to stop that wind. There was a lot of detail. This was a renovation, obviously, and renovation. I thought I could do it like at cost parity with regular renovations, and I don't know that I did that. I don't know that I did that. I don't know that the passive was how much the passive was an actual contributor to the cost overruns, because it was I was basically fixing a 120-year-old house at the same time as I was trying to make it passive. So it's kind of hard to tell where one thing begins and the other thing ends. But a lot of little details like this. You can go to the next slide. This is kind of the way of this is the 475 playbook. Basically, if you were to look, you see that white stuff, that white film that's everywhere with the little blue polka dots. That is the airtight barrier, the Intello. And basically their game plan is to use a regular stud wall, like 16 on center, 24 on center. It can be either one. and to basically wrap that stud wall with the Intello, basically using that blue tape at every seam to make sure it makes one solid, unimpeachable, impregnable, diaphragm. After that, you put those horizontal 2x4s you see there. It can be 2x3s. It can be really anything, and those things serve as a service cavity, where, as you can see in the bottom, you can see some of the electrical is run there. You can also run pipes through that. So you only have 1.5 inches, so it's not, but it gives you a place to run your mechanicals and keep your Intello safe, away from harm, away from a tenant, banging a nail into a wall, to hang a picture and puncturing your precious air barrier. And then, of course, it's real, the big thing it does is it holds your sheetrock. It's what you screw your sheetrock to. So this is the basic, like the 475 kind of townhouse plan. And it's a good plan. It's a robust plan. And I think it is actually, it is seaworthy. They're just things I would do differently. Okay, next one. And that's it. Carl Hansen.
Well done. Thank you, Michael. Just quickly, why did you choose the low to moderate income bracket for tenants? Was there an incentive for you to do so?
Well, actually, there's definitely an incentive to do it. I mean, it's not a giant incentive, and in no way did it, to cover my costs. But you can get. I think they might have changed it. Can somebody pipe in? I think it's $4,500 per unit that you can get as an incentive for making it low and moderate income. But more to the point, in Newburgh, everybody is like, Newburgh is low and moderate income. That's there are very few wealthy people strutting up and down the streets. So it was part of the reason I wanted to do it, was to provide I was trying to prove that you could make a low and moderate income renovation at cost parity with a regular renovation. That's what I was trying to prove it to myself, and I didn't quite prove it, but I did it. But it did still average out to be like 175 a square foot, so it's still pretty good.
Nice. Okay. Next up, we have Carl Hansen. Carl is a certified passive house consultant and a project manager at River Architects. Carl joined River in 2017 and immediately took the Cohen Skating Center and Fountain in Stamford, Connecticut through its final documentation stages and construction. Since then, he has earned his CPHC and enthusiastically tackled many high-performance projects. He recently completed a FIAS Plus 2018 certified organic cider mill and a high-performance residence that utilized panelized construction. There's those panels again. He uses his experience with large projects and background in metal fabrication to provide a balanced approach to managing projects with an attention to the careful execution of details. We featured the Seminary Hill Cidery project, which Carl will be talking about in the current issue of Upstate House's Passive House Guide. Carl.
All right, well, hello everyone. So I guess we can jump right into the slides. This is our Seminary Hill Cider project. It's located in Callicoon, New York, overlooking the Delaware River Valley. And this is our entry canopy to the project, lighting up at night. This has got the polycarbonate panels behind 2x2 cedar that's gapped. I should mention, the orchard is it's part of a larger grounds that the owners have and manage an orchard holistically, following the principles of Michael Phillips, who's a a well-known proponent of cultivating healthy trees. So no pesticides are used. They use daffodils planted around each tree to repel repel voles, and then use companion plants like bee balm and others to attract pollinators. So part of their goals when they came to us was to develop a project that was in sync with those goals and their overall ethics in terms of how they do their farming and orchard. So next slide. The project is conceptually based on a classic bank barn style. So that provides access, pedestrian access from both levels. The upper level being the event space and tap room with a commercial kitchen, and the lower level being the cider production facility. This project is FIA certified under the 2018 standard, and one of the most notable things is it's the first certified kind of fermented beverage facility in the world that included the production space. And the challenge there is because all that production equipment, creates a pretty high electrical load on the building and is, obviously difficult to offset. So we have a pretty substantial solar array to help offset the electrical loads as well. Let's go ahead to the next slide. It was also part of that entry that you saw there too. The entry canopy was inspired by all the classic barns, out here in the Hudson Valley. Our partner James Hartford remembers, visiting and exploring barns throughout his childhood growing up nearby, and so that was the idea behind this gapped 2x2 seater that, or I'm sorry, it's large in this case, but is allowing light to penetrate through, and you get this really lovely quality. Next slide. So one of the bigger challenges we had here too was the fact that we've got two different operations occurring in the same envelope. So we had to separate those two spaces and completely separate them in terms of the envelope. So we have, human comfort and apple comfort. And, our typical set points for a residential house or any other space for human occupancy is that 68 degrees in the summer and 77 in the winter. But apples obviously want something much cooler. So that led to us creating these two different thermal zones who are totally isolated from one another through the floor system. And that floor system is also insulated as well to keep these cooled or environmentally conditioned separately. Next slide. So the project's made up, the lower level production space is, poured in place concrete, with the upper level being a mix of heavy timber there, as you see on the left photo, and then some standard 2x6 construction on the right side of the building, all encapsulated in structural insulated panels that you can see being craned into place on the lower right photo. Next slide. And one of the really great products that we discovered and were able to use in this project was this product called Poriver, which is an expanded glass aggregate, which is a part of the concrete mix and gets added in. And one of the beautiful aspects of this is that it lightens the overall concrete mix, so that, obviously the trucks will be using less fuel because they have a lighter load when they're delivering to the site. And it also replaces some of the other, traditional amounts of traditional aggregates in the concrete pour. And the other nice thing about this, you'll see, is that it's got an R value associated with it. So it acts as a thermal insulator, and concrete normally being, maybe more of a thermal conductor, it's able to transfer it to a thermal insulator instead. So that allowed us to use a lot less insulation on the exterior of the lower level, in addition to the fact that it had a cooler set points or needs in the production space as well. So next slide. And then one of the other challenges we discovered in this project were that obviously during the fermentation process and so in the bottling process, there's a lot of CO2 that's released into the space. So our ventilation systems, are designed based on CO2 sensors in the lower level here in the production space, and they're designed to ramp up, obviously, when those levels spike. But additionally, they the spike in CO2 can happen in a very isolated single location. So when they're working at a specific tank, you see this hose on the main photo coming away with that there's an inline fan there. It's so isolated that we're able to resolve that by just hooking up this fan and running it out through the bottom of the overhead door just during those specific times. And you can see that upper level, that photo in the upper right shows you that very isolated peak, spike of CO2 when they're doing these specific exercises of, bottling or during the fermentation, and they're releasing some of those gases into the space. Next slide. And then upstairs, you see is primarily event space with the bar here, and the ventilation system up here as well is also runs on a dedicated ERV. So that's runs off of an occupancy sensor, because the venue is also run as a popular wedding venue. So it could have anywhere from 10 people sitting at the bar during the week, in there having a cider, to 250 people on a weekend event during a wedding. And obviously then we're all breathing and emitting so much more CO2, and with an airtight building, we gotta get that out. So the ERVs are designed as well to ramp up and deal with higher occupant loads, and then obviously come down to normal operating levels when there's fewer people there. Next slide. And another great thing about the materials we were able to use on this project, we sourced locally sourced bluestone for much of the stone veneer on the siding, and all of this exterior siding and interior paneling is reclaimed larch from the original Tappan Zee Bridge pylons. We came across a great opportunity when they had harvested all those while they're building a new bridge, and able to get them formed and used here. So, and then one of the, we have this great little pop out to capitalize on the beautiful views down to the river valley. Next slide. And then, as you can see, that next moment, and you've got large expanses to the southern facade there to make use of, obviously the solar exposure during the winter when we want that heat gain, and also, as I said before, the great views down to the river valley. I think that's going to be the last one. All right.
Nice, thanks, Carl. I was fascinated by the idea of incorporating the bridge pilings. Like, how much of that did you actually use?
Oh, I mean, I don't recall a square footage amount, but I mean, all of the wood siding that you see on the building is that reclaimed larch. And then additionally, all that interior wood paneling is all the same reclaimed larch.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that. Get a little bit of the history of the bridge in there. All right. In Cho is up next. In Cho is a registered architect, certified passive house designer, and co-founder of architecture firm Cho Shields Studio. For over 20 years, she has integrated environmental resiliency into her practice of creating and transforming people's spatial experiences to bring joy and well-being to their lives. Her wide-ranging focus encompasses the aesthetics of architectural design, technical aspects of energy-efficient construction, policy support, and designing and teaching educational initiatives that convey building sustainability knowledge, with the goal to empower everyone in addressing climate change so that we can together ensure a positive and equitable future for all. Well, yes, let's have more of that. Please tell us about what you've built.
Great, thank you, Brian. We can go to straight to screen share. And let me get started in just 1 second. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. And hello, everyone. It's really great to be here with all of you. What we love about Passive House is for its universal applicability to any building types, programs, sizes, shapes, and contexts, and all the while providing this really healthy, comfortable, and energy efficient spaces, as well as helping to mitigate climate change and support social equity. So Passive House can really work in all kinds of architectural styles, as we've seen from our esteemed panelists today and here as well. So these are some of our projects where we have applied the Passive House principles, some certified and some, in the pathways. And let's just go over a few of them with a little more detail. Next slide, please. So this is our Passive House project in Manhattan, and we call this project our Passive House mosaic, as it took so many different types of materials and strategies to realize this full gut renovation, which had a vertical as well as a horizontal enlargement and much structural remediation that had to take place. The existing building was brick shell with wood joists, and to this, we incorporated poured in place concrete for the foundation, new concrete masonry units to reinforce the structurally deficient party walls, along with structural steel and light gauge metal framing for the new extensions. And the new exterior walls were of a rain screen system with fiberglass cement siding. The multicolored drawings that you see show the thermal performance characteristics representing 7 different exterior wall conditions that made up the building mosaic so that we can maximize the thermal value of the building envelope. And with all of these strategies in place, when we compared it to the New York State average household energy use, in addition to meeting the Passive House EnerPHit target, we also achieved a 77% reduction in energy use. Next slide, please. So one specific detail of our building extension for the thermal insulation performance of the new vertical and horizontal extensions, our selection of the construction types was based on maximizing the insulative value of the wall assembly, balanced with structural and fire code requirements. So on the left photo for the front, the building code allowed us to take advantage of the higher thermal performance of wood framing. But for our party wall extensions shown on the right, which had to be completely non-combustible, given our narrow 19 feet wide building, rather than continuing up with masonry to match the existing, we chose structural steel and light gauge metal framing, which actually allowed us to gain an extra foot of width in our interior space while maximizing the thermal performance of the building envelope. Next slide, please. So here's a photo of one of the floors finished with the before image on the left. The main issue with the existing interior was that it was very dark and closed off, and our clients desired tons of sunlight and openness. So by using the high performance Passive House windows and doors, we were able to achieve this requirement quite easily without compromising on the thermal performance of the building envelope. Next slide. As mentioned, one of the things that we really love so much about Passive House is the flexibility of material usage. So here on another project, where we also created a vertical and horizontal extension, because in this case, we were very restricted in this urban setting to work only from our side of the property. So we ended up selecting this insulated CMU blocks, which you see on the right, that actually allowed us to build from inside of our building only and never be on the other side of the building envelope. Next slide. And in this project, the building was a wood frame construction that we were working with. And this was a full gut renovation with an extension on the ground floor where we can see a new kitchen in the middle and the large Passive House windows opening. Knowing these incredible benefits of Passive House, we pretty much reference Passive House as our guiding principle, like a North Star. And we apply the Passive House principles everywhere, both in urban as well as in rural contexts. Next slide. So in the real context, this also included what we'd like to call our current clients, for whom we built a very small goat creamery in upstate New York. And this existing goat barn structure is shown on the upper left. And onto this, we added a goat milking house, creamery, packaging, and storage facility. And similar to what Carl had mentioned, this is our proposed design, and we were keeping to the language of the existing barn, but we also had to have different zones of thermal insulative properties due to the fact that goats don't necessarily want everything to be so perfectly warm. So for the addition, due to the functional needs related to high humidity and food safety, we built the new portion of the exterior walls with CMU blocks combined with wood framing for the roof that you can see on the image on the upper left, rather upper right, and with using robust exterior mineral wool insulation. And then we finished it with a rain screen wood cladding. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the next slide, please. This was, I'm sorry, I'm a slide off. Right, so here we go. So this is where you can see all of the CMU blocks along with the wood roof framing as well as the mineral wool insulation. Next slide, please. Sorry about that. So for the freestanding residential projects in upstate, as shown here, of one of ours on the drawing board, we have a much greater flexibility to use wood-based materials, which not only maximizes the thermal performance, but also reduces the embodied carbon of our construction materials. So, which is starting to play a critical role in helping to further reduce our built environment carbon emissions, which is nearly 40% of all greenhouse gas emissions that lead to climate change. So with all of these benefits, from the aesthetics to comfort to personal, environmental, and social health, along with our great energy efficiency, in order to ensure the viability of our sustainable world. In addition to training industry professionals, we've extended beyond our professional community to spread the word and empower everyone to learn the benefits of Passive House. Next slide. So we do this by teaching Passive House concepts to youths from K through 12, as well as to college levels. And basically with the belief that teaching our children is one of the best ways to lay the groundwork for a sustainable future, as they will all soon become our decision makers and community leaders. So we empower youth to counter climate change through creative arts explorations of Passive House building science, and to learn through play in their imaginations in order to strengthen the connection of meaning for them. And hopefully this will lead to actions that advocate for a climate positive and socially equitable future for all. And thus the resiliency of our community to learn and express Passive House ideas truly shows us that basically no matter what the context, Passive House can be for everyone. Thank you very much.
Nice, thank you. Okay, we've got a couple of questions in here I'm gonna put out there. If anyone else has specific questions, I would invite you to put them into the chat. Oh, look, there's, thank you, okay. Somebody, well here, let's just jump on this one. I'm a retired teacher and building a Passive House. I would love to know more about teaching children about Passive House. So yeah, you guys are kind of seemingly at the vanguard of this from all that I can tell. So tell me, what, yeah, let's jump in on that,
Yes, absolutely. It's been quite a wonderful journey that started in 2018 when we realized that this is how much we love Passive House and believe in it, and realized that, you know what, everyone should know it, kind of like we all do recycling and we're all aware. And why can't people be empowered with this knowledge, and so that it goes beyond just our professionals, because not every aspect of it we would necessarily need an architect. So, you know, it kind of started there, and we just kept going. And we realized that we can teach literally kindergartners to, we have a advocacy website called passivehouseforeveryone.org. And if you go there, you'll see all kinds of performances, models, dancing, singing, you know, that children do. And so at the moment, we're also trying to implement it into, you know, much greater New York City curriculum level. Of course, that's a much long-term plan, but it's something that we're having a discussion with. So anyone who's interested, you know, we are hoping for this thing to go basically from local New York City to national to even international. So anyone who's interested, please, you know, reach out to me and, you know, to volunteer to spread the word. And the retired teacher who's interested, I'd love to, you know, you can email me and we can connect and see what we can do. That would be great. The more, the merrier.
Nice. Thanks, Ann. Thanks, James, for the Passive House Accelerator plug there. We won't keep everybody. We'll allow everybody to get a bathroom break and get on to their next thing. The question from Kevin Ramsey: have any of the panelists worked on a passive solar greenhouse? No. And Cynthia Bell is looking for your number in just in case.
Pardon? Oh, okay. So
in the chat.
Okay,
yeah.
someone is looking for my. I'll send my email.
They want to reach out and get with you.
Okay.
On that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Earlier, I think it was Alessandra, while you were giving your presentation, someone had asked, what are the advantages or not of having a cellar or basement? And so I'm curious to hear what y'all think about that. Because Alessandra, you just have a slab, right? You don't have a basement.
Yes, that's correct. I have a slab on grade, and well, in a passive house, because you have such reduced mechanical systems, you don't need a space to run a lot of ductwork or to put big equipment. You don't have, ideally a passive house is all electric. In my case it is, so you don't need, again, large equipment, minus the ERV and the domestic water boiler. So beside those things, you don't really need a space underneath. In my case, also my house is sitting on bedrock, so it would have cost me an arm and a leg to actually poke through that and dig a basement. So I excluded it from day one. But also, I am planning to build a shed to keep some of my tools and other things that right now are in closets. But I think a basement quite often just turns into a place where you collect clutter that you really don't need. And as we try to avoid the mechanical system, we also try to avoid collecting things we don't need. So I'm following that philosophy.
Nice. Michael? You're on mute, Michael.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I have been building on slab on grade here in Cape Cod. And I will say that although I still love the idea and I will probably do it again, a crawl space or a basement, there's a very good reason to have a crawl space or a basement in terms of the cost of getting the thing built. Because now if it's a slab on grade, then you really need to sit down with the architect. And unfortunately, the builder of the panels is an architect in my case, but he's not enough of an architect and a builder to actually leave chaseways for people to run their electrical or their pipes. So it was a very, very, very difficult thing to both wire and plumb this structure that I'm doing right now. And as I was, doing a debriefing with my electrician and my plumber, saying, "Okay, what would make this like cheaper and easier?" They both said, "A crawl space. Like, don't make us drill through 1,000 LVLs in order to get a one little half-inch pipe over to an ice maker." It's just, it really is. Or again, I think you really do have to sit down. You architects have to sit down and design into the framing plan chases that you can actually, to make your your tradespeople happy.
The builder's perspective, Carl or any comments on basements, crawl spaces?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that they, certainly from a space aspect, they can be beneficial, but there are cost savings to be found too from the fact that we're allowed to do frost protected shallow foundations. So anytime you can remove the cost of excavation or reduce that amount, you're going to find some decent savings. Moving earth is just always kind of an expensive aspect of a project. So if we don't have to dig as deep and we're able to fully insulate that slab and around the perimeter of that slab up into the building envelope and make that connection, then there's definitely savings to be found there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Someone, let's see. Oh, someone had a comment about heat pumps. Heat pumps are great, except that they can leak refrigerants, which have a huge global warming potential. Leaks are usually catastrophic when detected. Have you all had any problems with heat pumps that you've, put in homes that you've built?
Not so far. And as I think James mentioned in the comments there too, we do find some of the heat pump technology is going towards using CO2 as a refrigerant. So even if a leak is found or happens, you're only putting CO2 that's already in the atmosphere back into it. So it's not it's not adding any additional global warming potential refrigerants to the atmosphere.
Yeah. And definitely, that's a really good, question and point, because the refrigerant, that is one of the, toxic materials, and as part of embodied carbon, it is something that's being discussed and worked on to really kind of improve those elements, for substance use.
And I think you always have to look though at what is currently available, of course, and try to use the best of that. So. If we're using heat pumps, it's dramatically better than using a gas boiler or something like that. So because of the energy efficiency and because the heat pump has the potential, of course, of leaking, but if you maintain it, if you install it properly, that is not supposed to happen. While if you're burning fossil fuels, you're definitely gonna create that CO2, so it's about using what is the best technology that we have right now, and of course try to develop even better technology for the future.
Yeah, and that is the general attitude. I mean, there's like there's basically two main parts to us, especially in terms of the built environment mitigating climate change. First and foremost, first we have to reduce the energy usage, which Passive House does amazingly, and then second, we have to remove the use of fossil fuel. So once we can do both of those things and then start relying on renewables. So once we can do those two, we basically achieved our goal in terms of the built environment not becoming, a harmful contributor to the climate change.
Mm-hmm. The questions are coming in fast and furious now as we're running over time, but I just want to, this is an interesting one. I want to hear what you guys say about this. We just bought some land and want to build passive. We're not rich, but we are handy and looking to DIY as much as possible. How would you prioritize financial resources? Dun, dun, dun.
How would you prioritize?
Well, whatever happens, I think that, finding the passive approach is the best, meaning that, make sure that air sealing is first and foremost, and then in terms of priority comes insulating. And you basically want to make sure that you use as much of passive strategies as possible. And even in terms of solar orientation, right? So, and all those passive elements, so that at the end of the day, what you rely on the least is literally in what requires energy, which is in your mechanical systems. And then when you do that, go ahead.
Sorry, I talk over. Sorry about that. It's also the geometry. I mean, if you're in your own house, you might as well plan a nice, simple little geometry, because that'll make things much, 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 much cheaper.
But what does that mean, Michael? A simple geometry.
Well, I mean, the like a salt box, like a cape, like what I'm sitting in right now. It's like like four walls and a roof. Obviously you can bay windows, you can do, there's all kinds of stuff, but every time you do it, you're adding an expense. And then you're also adding in terms of the passive aspects, you're adding one more kind of complexity to joining your air barrier from this plane to this plane, you know, and then, you know, going around, you know, like the bay windows in my place were a real pain to get to have a continuous air barrier around. It took a lot of work, and work is time, and time is money.
So you're saying you're not suggesting people build something like Alessandro built with that big chunk bitten out of it like that? And
no,
yeah.
I think exactly like Alessandro built, because actually I mean, it's exactly, that's an extremely efficient design, but I mean, I mean, in terms of just the overall geometry of it, it seems like it's a very simple design. It's just, you know, he just took a bite out of it, you know, which Alessandro is really cool.
For
Yeah,
sure.
the other thing too is to you know, make sure you prioritize the aspects that are critical towards passive design. You know, don't try to reduce your insulation so much, because the whole point is that some of that upfront you know, one-time cost is what benefits you for the lifetime of the building. That's why it's called passive. You're focusing on the elements that, you know, are going to always operate for you in a passive system, not an active system like your mechanical. You know, so it's all about making sure you invest properly in good windows and good insulation, and doing that right the first time. And as long as you do that, then that building is going to pay you back over time.
You know, I'm also going to say that as do-it-yourselfers, air sealing is something that a do-yourselfer can. You watch a YouTube video or two, and you can become an ace air sealer. You know, it's something that you could actually, it's really something that the homeowner can definitely do. A semi-handy homeowner.
It's interesting because I would that question, I was like, they're going to say like passive house is beyond like, you know, like a non-technical professional, but I'm hearing good things right now that like people can take it to at least like a kind of a certain level on their own if they like have a certain handiness.
Yeah, and a certain guidance. You know, you do need certain guidance, but yeah.
I'm gonna go against the tide and try to bring water to my office, and say that you cannot really get as a do it yourself. You cannot get a passive house. You do need because a passive. Well, you can get a very energy efficient building, but if you want a passive house or even a certified passive house, you need an energy model. You need a mechanical engineer or somebody that knows their stuff to design the mechanical systems, to avoid problems with the because you're not going to have a source of heat in each room, so you want to avoid problems of the stagnating air. You want to have a proper circulation of the air through the ERV, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all skills, and all of us working in this industry, we've spent countless hours on Zoom calls and on books and reading other projects, reading papers and so on to learn these skills. So I think that you can do a very energy efficient home yourself, looking at the video tutorials. But if you want to do a passive house, you do need to work with somebody who's a professional. Like, unless you are willing to put a lot of time actually learning your skills first, and then applying to that. I think everybody, I hope the architects, builders, engineers that are listening to this call, and the builders, yeah, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of experience. I made mistakes in my passive house, and I'm not doing it and I'm sure I'm making other mistakes in other passive houses that I'm building right now. And I hope that when I retire, I'm going to make less mistakes. But it's a long learning curve. So.
I'm not saying that you don't have to hire professionals, Alessandro. That wasn't what I meant. I'm saying there's certain things like painting or air sealing that you don't necessarily have to have a skilled person to do. I'm assuming that if you're building your passive house, you're going to have a passive house consultant, and you're going to have he's going to probably make you hire a mechanical engineer, which he should, so you know that your systems are working, and you're going to need you got to pay a lot of money for a lot of professionals, but there are certain aspects you can do by yourself.
Right. Yeah, and I think that, you know, everyone's comment is all, I agree with everyone in the sense that, you know, the concepts themselves, understanding them is very straightforward, that everyone can understand. It's really common sense, you know. The ideas stem from even pre-electricity days. You know, the Little House on the Prairie, they had, you know, they had an ice house, right? The ice box where they put 4-inch thick of straw bale as insulation. So the concepts are simple, but I think it's more in terms of, as Alessandra mentioned, how they're choreographed together, you know, how the building elements come together. These are the connections that make it much more complex. And certainly, you know, it's important to work with a passive house consultant, designer, et cetera, professional. But I think what's really wonderful is that there could be a dialogue with, you know, the professional, and for someone who actually wanted to do it themselves and they're quite capable, that they could be a really good kind of teamwork that could happen with the two, you know.
Completely agreed on that. And I think that this is going to be the end of our time together, because we want to let everybody get on to the Passive House Accelerator or whatever else they're doing. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you to our panelists. And I will send, you know, if you guys are, anyone's looking for more resources, their questions weren't answered, I encourage them to go to Passive House Hudson Valley's website for more information and resources there. That is a good source for information. Thank you to our sponsors, all of them: New Energy Works, Energy Conservation Services, Cho Shield Studio, PH Design, GH Builders, Hudson Valley. And please continue to read our magazines, where we will talk more about these issues. Thank you all for joining us. Have a lovely evening.